The broom was old and missing 2 bristles on the left side. Ethan Cole had been using it for 3 years, and he had never once complained. He swept the stone floor of the great hall every morning before anyone else arrived, moving quietly between the long wooden tables, collecting dust, dried leaves, and the occasional broken cup left behind from the night before. Nobody watched him work, nobody thanked him. That was simply how things were. He was 21 years old, and had lived his entire life inside the Ironblood Pack. But the word lived was perhaps too generous. He existed there. He occupied space in a small storage room on the lower floor of the pack house, a room that smelled of old wood and cold stone. He ate what was left after others had eaten. He wore clothes that no longer fit the wolves who had outgrown them. And he did every piece of work that no one else wanted to do, the sweeping, the carrying, the cleaning, the lifting, without being asked twice. The reason the pack treated him this way was simple, at least in their eyes. Ethan had no wolf. Every wolf in the pack had shifted for the first time before the age of 16. It was a moment of celebration, a rite of passage, something that tied each member to their pack, to their bloodline, to the ancient laws that held their world together. When Ethan turned 16, nothing happened. When he turned 17, still nothing. His 18th birthday came and went, like a quiet wind, and by 19, the pack had stopped waiting. He was, they said, broken, defective, worthless. His cousin Victor had been the first to say it out loud. Victor Cole was everything Ethan was not. Broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, admired by the pack, and always present at the center of any celebration. He had shifted at 14, earlier than almost anyone in recent memory, and the Alpha had personally praised him in front of the entire pack. Victor walked through the world as though it had been built for him, and in many ways, as far as the Ironblood Pack was concerned, it had. "You are nothing," Victor had told Ethan once, leaning against the wall of the lower corridor, arms folded, while Ethan carried a load of firewood twice the size that any wolf would have been asked to carry. "You know that, right? You are nothing, and you will always be nothing. At least make yourself useful while you take up space." Ethan had not answered. He had simply walked past him and continued to the fireplace. That was the way Ethan moved through the world, quietly, carefully, without reacting to the sharpness of other people's words. Some in the pack mistook his silence for stupidity. Others thought he was simply too broken to feel anything. But the truth was that Ethan felt everything. He just had nowhere to put it. So he carried it the same way he carried the firewood, steadily, without complaint, one step at a time. 3 days before the pack was set to leave for the northern border to defend their territory, Ethan woke in the early hours of the morning with a burning pain across his chest. He sat up on his thin mattress, pressing his hand to his sternum. The pain was not sharp like a wound. It was deep and spreading, like heat moving through water, slow and patient, and impossible to stop. He had felt it faintly for 2 days before, but he had assumed it was the result of overwork. Now, in the dark and quiet of his small room, he could no longer ignore it. He pulled aside the collar of his shirt and looked down. There was a mark on his skin. It sat directly over his heart, crescent-shaped, the size of a large coin, and it glowed faintly gold at the edges, with black at its center, like a sun seen through smoke. He had never seen anything like it. He touched it carefully with one finger, and the moment he did, a wave of warmth moved through his body so powerful that he had to hold the wall to stay standing. He did not know what it was. He pulled his shirt back up and lay down again, staring at the ceiling in the dark. By morning, the pack healer had been sent for. Her name was Sarah, a middle-aged woman with careful hands and a face that rarely showed emotion. She examined Ethan in silence, pressing gently around the mark, watching it pulse faintly in the morning light. Then she went very still, her hands pulled back slowly, as if she was afraid to touch it further. She covered him with a cloth without a word, told him to rest, and left the room at a pace that was almost, but not quite, running. Ethan watched the door close behind her, and thought to himself that whatever she had seen, she had recognized it. And whatever it was, it had frightened her. "Summer," Alpha Raven Blackthorn ruled the Ironblood Pack with the kind of authority that did not need to be raised. She did not shout, she did not threaten. She simply decided, and things happened. The pack respected her the way people respect a thunderstorm, completely, and with an awareness that it was not entirely optional. She was 26 years old, with dark eyes that missed nothing, and a way of moving through a room that made other wolves unconsciously step aside. She had taken leadership of the pack at 20, after her father was injured in a territorial conflict, and she had not softened a single edge of herself since. She had never paid attention to Ethan. That was the truth she could not quite face when, on the night after Sarah the healer had come to her with shaking hands and a barely coherent explanation about a mark she had seen, Raven found herself walking down the lower corridor of the pack house at midnight. She told herself she was simply confirming the healer's report, that it was a matter of pack security, that she was doing her duty as Alpha. But when she reached the door of Ethan's room and stood in the doorway, looking at him, asleep on his thin mattress, one arm across his chest, as if protecting the mark even in sleep, she felt something shift inside her that had nothing to do with duty. Her wolf, which had been steady and controlled for years, pressed forward, with a force that almost knocked her off balance. It was not a feeling she recognized. It was recognition itself, the ancient, wordless knowledge that something important was in front of her, something her wolf knew, even when her mind refused to. She stood there for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away, saying nothing, feeling unsettled in a way she had not felt since she was a child. Pinchleva. Victor learned about the mark through a packmate he had paid well for information over the years. By the time the sun set that same evening, he was already at the door of the Elder Seer. The Elder Seer was known only as Maeva. She was ancient in the way that certain things are ancient. Not just old in years, but old in knowledge, in weight, in the feeling she carried with her whenever she entered a room. She lived at the edge of pack territory, in a house built against an old oak tree, and she was consulted rarely, because most wolves found that her answers, while always true, were rarely comfortable. Victor did not waste time. "The healer says a mark appeared on the worthless one," he said, stepping inside without being invited. "Tell me it is nothing. Tell me it is some kind of mark that means nothing." Maeva looked at him from her chair by the fire for a long time before she spoke. "The Alpha King's bloodline," she said, "does not ask permission. It does not consult the opinions of those who believe they deserve it more than they do. It moves through time, and it chooses, and when it chooses, all the wishing in the world will not undo it." Victor stared at her. "He has no wolf. He has never shifted. He is the lowest thing in this pack." "He was hidden," Maeva said simply. "The bloodline hides what it is not yet time to reveal. The seal is breaking now, because the time has come." She looked at Victor with eyes that were very calm and very clear. "Well, home, do not do what you are thinking of doing. There is no version of that path that ends well for you." Victor left without answering, but he did not go home. It happened on a night when the sky was cloudless and the stars were very bright. Ethan woke not from pain, but from something he had never felt before. A stirring, deep and massive and warm, like something enormous turning over slowly inside him after a very long sleep. He sat up. His hands were trembling. The mark on his chest was blazing now, gold and black light pulsing steadily, and then something broke open inside him, like a door being pushed from the other side, by a force that had been waiting a very, very long time. He shifted. Later, those who had been there would say that every window in the pack house rattled at once. That wolves across the territory were pulled from their sleep by something they could not name, something pressing on the pack bond like a hand pressing on still water. That without knowing why, their knees bent, and they found themselves bowing, every one of them, to a direction they could not explain. In the courtyard, Ethan stood in his wolf form for the first time in his life. His wolf was enormous, larger than any wolf the pack had ever seen outside of old paintings in the elder records. Its fur was black, so dark that it seemed to hold the night inside it, but along its spine and across its shoulders, threads of gold moved like light on a river. It stood still in the center of the courtyard and simply breathed, its golden eyes open and steady, and every wolf who looked at it felt the same thing: ancient. This was something ancient. Ethan himself, inside that wolf, felt only one thing clearly: he was whole. For the first time in his life, He was completely, entirely whole. Suck. Alpha Raven watched from the high balcony. She was gripping the stone railing with both hands. Her wolf was not calm. Her wolf was pressing against every wall she had spent years building, whimpering in a way she had never allowed it to do, straining forward with a desperation she did not understand and could not stop. The mate bond, which she had never felt before, had snapped open all at once, and through it she felt everything. Every cold morning in that small room, every meal eaten alone, every moment of silence chosen in the place of a response that would only have caused more damage. She felt all of it as though it had happened to her, and something inside her chest cracked open at the edges. 2 tears ran down her face. She did not wipe them away. She simply stood there, holding the railing, watching the most extraordinary thing she had ever seen in her life, and understanding, slowly and without any remaining room for argument, that she had been looking past the most important person in her world, every single day for years. Victor moved through the edge of the crowd with a silver blade in his coat. Ancient wolf law held that a sacred mark could be removed from one who was unworthy, and that the power could be transferred, if the ritual was performed within the first 3 days of awakening. Victor did not know if this was still practiced. He did not care. He had found the text in an old record, and that was enough. He reached Ethan just as Ethan shifted back, standing again in human form, looking down at his hands with an expression of quiet wonder. Victor came close and spoke softly, the way he always spoke when he wanted to sound reasonable. "You don't understand what this means," he said. "This mark is not a gift, Ethan. It is a burden. It will destroy you. You have never led anyone. You have never been anything. Let me carry this for you. Let me take it, and you can finally be free." Ethan looked at him for a long moment. The courtyard had gone completely still. "You have been afraid of me," Ethan said. His voice was very quiet and very steady. "This whole time. Every cruel word. Every time you made sure the pack saw me as nothing. It was because some part of you already knew. Wasn't it?" Victor's face shifted. Something moved behind his eyes that was not quite anger and not quite shame, but lived somewhere close to both. He raised the blade. He never reached Ethan. Alpha Raven moved faster than Victor could follow. She was between them before he had finished raising his arm, and the blade caught her forearm instead of its intended target. She did not make a sound. She stood with her back to Ethan, and her eyes on Victor, and the look on her face was the kind of look that ends conversations before they begin. "You raised a blade," she said, in a voice so quiet the entire courtyard leaned forward to hear it. "Against your Alpha King. Under ancient law, that is treason. Under my law, it is finished." Victor dropped the blade. He had no choice. The pack had closed around him. The stripping of rank was done the following morning, in front of the assembled pack, under clear daylight. Victor stood in the center of the gathering circle and was formally removed from his position as Beta. The pack bond thinned around him. His rank marking faded. Ethan stood nearby and watched. When it was done, the elder approached him and asked what judgment he wished to pass. The pack waited for exile. Some waited for something harsher. "Let him stay," Ethan said. "Let him live in the pack at the lowest rank. Let him learn what it feels like to be unseen. Not as punishment." He paused. "As an education." The elder seer Maeva stepped forward then, which she had not done in years, and she spoke to the pack in a voice that was old and sure. She told them about the first Alpha King, a figure from before their oldest records, a wolf who had also been cast out, also overlooked, also told he was not enough. She told them that the bloodline had not chosen someone powerful because power was common. It had waited 300 years for someone who understood what it was to need kindness, so that when he led, he would never forget why it mattered. "Strength without understanding," she said, "is just force." He was not given 300 years of suffering. He was given 300 years of preparation. 3 weeks passed. The pack changed the way a room changes when someone opens a window, slowly, and then all at once. Wolves who had walked past Ethan for years without seeing him began to pause in the corridor, not with grand speeches or dramatic apologies, but with small things. A nod, a held door, a cup of tea placed near his work without comment. Ethan accepted each of these things the same way he had accepted everything else in his life, quietly, without making much of it. He did not hold anything against anyone. He also did not pretend that the years had not happened. He simply kept moving forward, as he always had, except now the path was wider. On a Thursday evening, at dusk, Alpha Raven came to find him at the eastern cliff. It was a place she had always gone alone when she needed silence. She had never told anyone about it. She was not entirely sure how she knew he would be there, but he was, sitting on the flat stone at the cliff's edge, looking out at the valley below, where the last of the sunlight was pulling itself over the horizon. She sat beside him without speaking for a while. Then she shifted, her white wolf settling close to him, and she lowered her head in a way no alpha had lowered their head to another wolf in anyone's living memory. Ethan put his hand gently on top of her head. They watched the last of the sun disappear together. When she shifted back, the air between them was very still. "I called you worthless," she said. He looked at her for a moment. "You called me what everyone had taught you I was," he said. "That is not the same thing." She was quiet for a long time. The stars were beginning to appear. "I want to spend the rest of my life unlearning that lesson," she said finally. He looked back out at the valley. A small, genuine smile crossed his face, the kind that belonged only to a person who had learned not to need approval before they could be at peace. "Then we will have something to do," he said. The first gathering under his leadership was held 1 month later. The pack assembled in the Great Hall, the same hall where Ethan had swept the floors every morning for 3 years, where Victor had told him he was nothing, where the annual ranking ceremony had taken place without ever making room for him. Now the hall was full, and every wolf was standing. Ethan walked in without ceremony. He wore no special clothing. He carried nothing. The Alpha King's mark rested visible above the collar of his shirt, steady and gold, pulsing with a calm, quiet light. Every wolf in the room bowed. He raised his hand and asked them to stand. "We are not a pack that kneels," he said. His voice carried easily through the hall, not because it was loud, but because the room was listening. "We are a pack that chooses. We choose what we stand for. We choose how we treat the people around us. We choose who we become." He looked around the room, at faces he had known his entire life, faces that had looked through him for years. There was no bitterness in his expression. There was only clarity. "Starting today, we choose better." The hall was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, they stood straighter.